Hi everyone, and thank you for watching this video. I apologize for taking so long to film this part 2 in the series, How to Accompany Others with Your Cello. I had a baby, and I was very sick for the 9 months that I was pregnant. That was not fun. Totally worth it though. And then during the newborn phase, I wanted to just give my full and undivided attention to the baby. Today, my mom is babysitting, so I actually had some time to sit down and get this done. Before we begin, I do want to say that this is not a comprehensive guide to all bow techniques and all bow strokes. You could make 100 videos on that topic, but I'm going to keep it very simple and very basic today. I also have a book recommendation. This is by Galamian, and it is titled Principles of Violin Playing and Teaching. Now you might be thinking, I'm a cellist. What could a violin teacher possibly say that's relevant to me? But the neat thing is that the way that he describes the different bow strokes and explains the best ways to practice them, describes the relationship between fingers, wrist, and arm movement, 99.9% of that directly translates from violin to cello. Let's get started by talking about dynamics. You are able to play very loudly on your instrument and you are able to play very softly. And if you are a brand new beginner, you might not know how to achieve those different dynamics. So the simplest way to explain it is that as you get closer to the bridge, your sound gets louder. As you move your bow closer to the fingerboard, the sound gets softer. It's not, unfortunately, as simple as I go to the bridge, I play loud, I get a great sound. You have to consider all three aspects of good tone production, and those are speed, pressure, and contact point. Contact points, they are the places in between the fingerboard and the bridge that you can put your bow. So that's contact point. And then of course, speed and pressure, how fast you move your bow, how much weight of the arm you place into the bow. At the bridge, generally speaking, you do want to move your bow slower and heavier with more weight. Near the fingerboard, you want to use a faster and lighter bow. And that generally is what's going to produce a beautiful sound no matter where you are and no matter what dynamic you are wanting to produce. Now that we've talked about dynamics, let's go ahead and discuss actual bow strokes. The first one, which is your default, this is, if someone hands you a sheet of music and you don't see any other marking, this is what you go to. And this bow stroke is called Detaché. Detaché means detached. So we are not putting multiple notes in one bow direction. That's something else that we're going to talk about in a second. That's called legato. Detaché is just one note per each bow direction. Specifically, I'm talking about simple detaché, and Galamian does make that distinction. Detaché is kind of an umbrella term, so if you make slight adjustments to the certain way that you're bowing, which I'm not going to get into in this video, then that's something else. But this is just simple detaché, which is back and forth without any pauses between the notes. Down bow, up bow, down bow, up bow. It doesn't matter where in the bow you do it. Or how much bow you use. It can be a little bow, it can be the whole bow. Just a simple back and forth without any kind of change in pressure throughout the bow stroke. No accents or anything like that. That is simple detaché. As an example of what this would sound like as an accompaniment, here is Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. Oh, look at all the lonely people. So that first bit, simple detaché. Next up, and this is what I briefly mentioned a second ago, is legato. And this is where you put multiple notes in the same bow stroke. According to Galamian, some teachers will say, well, it just means smooth and connected, so that doesn't exclusively mean that you're putting multiple notes in one bow. It just means very smooth, very connected. But Galamian does specifically say a slur. Hold me close and hold me fast, the magic spell you cast. Next up is portato, spelled like potato, but you have an R in there. Portato is just several notes in one bow direction, so like legato, but each note has a very gentle emphasis on it. So next up is the Martelé bow stroke, and that just means hammered. And it has kind of a bell-like quality to it, so I always imagine a little hammer striking a bell, and that's kind of the sound that we're wanting to go for. You start off by pinching, rotate our arm this way, so we have some pronation going on, which automatically puts some weight from the first finger into the bow, and then we don't start the motion, at least with a long Martelé bow stroke, we don't start the motion with our fingers, we start it with our arm. So we're going to pinch and then move our arm, and the bow goes very quickly, and you want to be careful not to reapply any pressure at the end of the note because we don't want it to cut off or sound abrupt. That's not what we want. And you can do it anywhere in the bow. You can use however much bow you want, and that is the Martelé stroke. Be careful whenever you're doing, and especially a long Martelé bow stroke, that your bow stays parallel to the bridge, because if not, look what happens. Yeah, your bow kind of just does whatever it wants. It drags itself. So make sure that your bow is straight. Practice in front of a mirror. That always helps. Record yourself practicing. I'm sure I'm going to look back on this and think, geez, my bow could have been a little bit straighter. But just something to keep in mind. Staccato, Galamian defines it a little bit differently than what you'll find online or from, I don't want to say most other teachers, but he defines it as short, separated notes all in one bow direction. And a lot of other teachers will just say, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be all in one direction. This could also be considered staccato. One of the main things to keep in mind is that the hair never leaves the string. So I'm not like picking anything up or bouncing. That's going to come later. That's something else. We just keep our hair on the string like this. We just move it like that. And then our big bee picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. That's kind of what it sounds like. Spiccato is where you drop your bow onto the string and then lift it. So a bounce, basically. The slower motion comes from your shoulder like this, just kind of moving your arm like this in a U shape. You're drawing a U. The faster you get, the less that your upper arm is involved. So I'm going to use the same example. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream. All of those, as you can see, that's spiccato, and it works best in this general vicinity in your bow. Ponticello, which means to play at or actually over the bridge. It's a pretty crazy sound. It's very ghostly. So that can be a fun texture to play with. On rare occasions, it's definitely not your go-to, but it can add some interest. Then you can do the opposite of that, which is called Sul Tasto, and that's where you play over the fingerboard. And I've heard it described as a veiled sound. I actually just recently heard that. I can't remember where, or I would tell you, but that's a great description. as opposed to such a beautiful sound, a really interesting, unique effect. Next up is Col Legno, which is where we play with the wood of the bow. So we're going to kind of dip our wrist like this. I like to straighten out my thumb just a little bit so that, you know, the wood can make contact with the string. And you can bounce it. You can bow it, although that's pretty rare. And then our Rigby, it picks up the rice in the church where a wedding is spent. Listen a dream. I like how without the English accent, those don't rhyme. Be careful that you don't damage your bow. I would recommend using an old bow that you don't care about, or a carbon fiber bow is a good idea, but yes, be careful. And lastly, this has nothing to do with the bow, but I figured I should include just a brief explanation of pizzicato and how to do that. Give a thumbs up. And keep these fingers loose so you're not having any undue tension. And yeah, just go for it. And then if you're wanting to pluck individual notes, just give a thumbs up again, stick it to the side of the fingerboard to stay anchored, and then you can use your first and or second finger. Alright, that concludes this video. I wish I could have gone into more detail, but I am out of time, and I just hope that what we were able to go over today is helpful. If you have any additional comments or questions, please put those in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.